Hi, this is Ken Adams, and this is 2016 elections with your city candidates. And today we have Tiffany Partridge from Ward 5. And I want to remind folks that the primary is the important election for city positions, because there's no more than 2 candidates in each of the wards, and there's no more than 2 candidates running for mayor. So if you want to have a voice in who's on your city council, you got to do it on May 17th.
That's right.
So this is your chance. So Tiffany, welcome.
Thank you.
You know, yeah. What made you decide to run?
Well, I have lived in Salem almost my entire life, with the exception of maybe like 6 years in different like little year fragments. And I love Salem. And I heard from a friend that Diana Dickey was not going to be running, and so I made an appointment with her. And because you know, I'm finishing up grad school, and so of course research is very important to me. I do a lot of that, and so I wanted to just research it and talk to her realistically. How many hours are we talking about? How much help can I be on city council? And after speaking with her and on more than once and discussing it with my friends and my family, I just knew that that's something that I wanted to do. It's important to me to feel like you're giving back, and I apologize, I can't remember right now who said the quote, but I really love the quote that says, civic activity is the price you pay for living on the planet. So I think that's really important, to be involved. And one of the benefits I have of being here so long, I've been in my ward for almost 9 years, but throughout my life I've lived, except for West Salem, I've lived in every area of the city at some point or another. And so I think that gives me a really good insight into what the neighborhoods want and need. I've been there, I've experienced it firsthand, and I think that gives me a really unique perspective that not maybe everybody has.
Well, and that's actually good, because even though you're elected from Ward 5, you're really representing the whole city and
Absolutely.
need to be familiar with all the various problems that go on in various parts of the city.
Right, exactly.
So, infrastructure. And we're probably going to have a bond measure about the police facility in the general election
Right,
in November. And so there's a lot of talk about, is it the right size? Does it cost too much? But there seems to be no disagreement from anybody I've heard anyway, that we need a new police station. It's too small to really accommodate the size force that we have. And as an example, the city of Kaiser, who has about 1/5 the number of officers that Salem has an actually larger police station than what we have right now.
Right.
So that's just a clue as to what we're dealing with here.
We definitely have a problem with our current facility. It's just much too small. Like almost everyone who's talked about it said, it was small about a year in. So we definitely need to do something. And like you said, most people agree that that is absolutely what we should do. There's some disagreement about the size of the facility, and that has turned into quite the hot topic. And I think it's a hard decision. I know a lot of folks said that there was this task force study that originally showed up, and their recommendation was 75,000 square feet originally, and then now we got some plans and some information from an outside source and their job is to build police facilities, and now we have it and it's double. The thing to keep in mind, and I think maybe not everybody knows this, is that when they first came back with that 75,000 square feet, they were doing that based on the fact that they wanted it on a certain property, and that's how big the property was. It wasn't that they recommended that the site only be 75,000 square feet. That's the amount of room they were given to work with. So they said a facility that's 75,000 square feet, you know, could have this and this and this, and this is how much it would cost. And now, you know, after speaking with the project managers and the people that we've hired to look into it, and the fact that we opened it up to see where we should have it. And so now we have a larger facility. I think almost everybody does agree that the O'Brien site is the right site. If you, I always am attending the meetings and the work sessions, and which I appreciate CCTV, that sometimes when I can't make it, I can sit at home and watch it in my pajamas. But nobody wanted it at the other option. It just would have caused too much chaos. So the O'Brien site is a great site. That is a larger facility. But something to keep in mind is that we're not just talking about policemen and women and they're needing a locker room and a place to store their stuff and a place for SWAT to store their stuff. We're also talking about, there's a lot of administration that goes on. There's a lot, we have crime labs and they need space, and we need rooms that we don't have now that separate folks. When you come in and you want to report a crime, the last thing you want to be doing is talking to an officer about how you have been violated in some way, and just a few feet away they've got some guy, whether or not it is, or woman, the person who committed that crime, but just the fact that there's a suspect over here talking, that is not a safe place. That doesn't feel safe to come and report a crime. So there's a lot more that we need to think about. With that said, I am a frugal person by nature. I think I mentioned at the forum the other day that I am a couponer, even before it was popular on TV. So I'm not big on spending money that we don't need to spend, but I think we need to take into consideration what we're getting, and then look at the price of that. I do think that if we're putting the bond measure in November, we need to include in that, and I'm sure you're probably going to get to this, but the seismic overhaul that we need for the library and for the city hall. I'm excited, hopefully, to represent our ward and our city and city council. I really am hoping that when the big one comes, all of city council doesn't just slide down to the Reed Opera House. So, but more importantly, our library. We have not only the staff who work there, but they've been doing a really excellent job at creating spaces that are fun and interesting, that brings in not only adults and teenagers, which is very hard to do, to bring them into a library, but also, the kids with the Lego playtime and all those great things. We need to know, as parents, as aunts, as a grandma now, that when I take the kids there, they're safe. That, if the big one comes, we're not gonna not make it out. So I think that needs to be included in the bond measure. I know the price tag is large. It's really scary when someone says to you $80 million. And so what that breaks up to is if you have a $200,000 home, that $80 million is basically going to be $7.04 a month. Depending on how you look at it, that could be a lot, that could be not very much. But I think it's helpful to know that number when we're looking at it, so we can decide as a community if that's something we want, and that's one of the things I do like, that they've been doing a better job recently in City Council about getting public opinion. I'm excited to see about the public survey that they've been doing to come back on that.
Well, it's one of the things too, and you mentioned the crime lab, and I found out recently that the crime lab is located, I think it was like 6+ miles from the police station.
Right.
So that means every day they take new stuff over to the crime lab and pick up the stuff they took over the day before or whatever back. I mean, that is kind of ridiculous. You're opening yourself up to car accidents and who knows what else.
Well, and they're storing it there. So if you're a detective or an officer and you're working on a case and the crime lab already looked at your stuff and they took it back, and then you have a question, you're like, wait, whatever kind of, I'm not I watch CSI, but that's about it. So they need to look at that information again. Then they either have to call someone and they have to go and get it, or they have to drive over there and get it, and then they have to bring it back in order to look at it, because that's not a space where they can look at it and keep it safe and chain of command and all those things. So yeah, it's not, and I think also something to think about that we haven't really talked enough about, I don't think, is that when you're building a police facility, it needs to be safe. And not just separation of folks who are reporting a crime and folks have perhaps committed a crime, but also clearly it'll be newly built and it will be seismically, appropriate. But also sometimes people try to do things to police facilities that they wouldn't otherwise do to buildings. And there is, in addition, keeping the guns safe, all those things, those require different types of construction than you would have in just a regular office building. And so that costs more, unfortunately, but it keeps everybody safe, so.
Yeah, and the thing about bonds, and I believe it was Councilman Nanke mentioned this at one of those hearings, the work sessions. He was saying that like you can actually have the bond start applying when some other bond has gone off the book. So it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get this jump.
Right.
The idea is to try to level it out and not actually increase. It just means you're going to be paying on it longer.
Right, longer, right. And which is, I guess how you look at it, but I feel like that's a good thing because like you said, then you don't have this like,
Big
bump coming. It just is a steady, even, right.
Now, one of the other infrastructure problems, and this to me is kind of interesting because I interviewed a bunch of candidates in 2014, is the third bridge. And so I like to ask the candidates what their view of the third bridge is, and there's a bigger price tag on that. And so I asked this question because it's been a question here in Salem for a long period of time. So what is your view on the third bridge?
Yes, you're right. It has been a long time that we've been talking about it. And I think it's a hard question because I think clearly we have transportation issues. Anyone who has driven trying to get over to West Salem or back from West Salem in the morning or the evening, and actually the studies they're doing now are showing that we're having longer periods of congestion. So in the middle, you used to kind of have this morning rush and this afternoon rush, and then in the middle it was kind of okay, and we're starting to see that narrow where we're having more congestion for a steadier time period. However, my personal opinion is currently with the way that it is situated now, I am not for the third bridge. I have concerns about, clearly being in Ward 5, it affects my ward greatly, and I have concerns about I'm afraid we're going to turn in a great portion of both Ward 5 and Ward 1 into it's all just going to be like an on-ramp to to the new bridge. And so we're going to have these areas that aren't developable and you're not going to get, it's going to take away from a community feeling, and it's going to be more
big separation.
Yes. And the separation from downtown, which is terrible because we've been doing such a good job revitalizing downtown. I love, like I said, I've been here a long time. And it used to be if it was like 5:30 in the evening, I'd say like 6:30 because people were still leaving for work. 6:30 in the evening on a weekday and you go downtown, there's nobody there. But now there's people to all hours downtown, and I think it's great, and we've got some wonderful businesses that have been there for a long time that are thriving, and we've got new businesses and restaurants, and it's really wonderful. And to make it more difficult, especially for Ward 5, that already kind of feels like we're on the fringes anyway.
A little left out,
yeah,
maybe?
We are. It's a little sad, and the folks in our ward, they're hardworking people, and they deserve to have easy access to downtown and to other places and to enjoy the city, and that would really put a damper on that. So not only do I think that the current proposition is not aesthetically pleasing for our neighborhood, but also it's going to cause a damper on our folks being able to get over there and growth. I mean, people aren't going to want to develop right next to
Expressway.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. Right.
Well, one of the things I've noticed is, and this is probably more prevalent in the morning when I'm watching the traffic patterns, is that when school's out, there's no holdup. But that teaches me the fact that maybe what the problem is that we need commuter buses from West Salem to downtown and back. And that would alleviate some of the traffic on the bridge. I think if we can, if you had someplace to park over in West Salem, take the little express bus over to downtown, it drops you off. Because we have a lot of state workers, city workers, county workers, everything here in Salem.
It's all here, right?
So the thing is that the transportation issue then could alleviate in some way the traffic that we have. And recently we had a bond measure rejected to expand service into the evening hours and on weekends. So what can the city do to help maybe with getting transportation here full time? So it benefits more people, so you have less people driving.
Right. And I think that actually I talked to someone else earlier about that same idea about the bus, and I think that's wonderful. I think you have people who come even from Monmouth and Independence and Dallas and drive in to Salem. If they could park somewhere and then take the shuttle over, that would be wonderful. I'd even love to see us, as an owner of an electric car, I would love to see us have some plug-ins for folks so they could plug in while they're then they take the shuttle over and they go to work and then they come back and then they're charged up ready to go. So I think programs like that would be really, really useful, and I think we're not doing enough to look at that. I think you're absolutely right. Transportation is a problem. We need to find, obviously, folks weren't ready to pay for that when that bond failed, so we need to look at it from a different way. We need to try to partner with the county, and with there's more things through the DOT that we can look at to try to maybe find some money to help us with that. But certainly in a city, I mean, we're the third largest city in the state, and for us to only have bus service during the weekdays and in such a limited fashion is really not good. We really need to fix that because not everybody works Monday through Friday 8 to 5. We have a lot of folks who work off hours. I know I've worked 2 and 3 jobs at a time and trying to, get that schedule so that I could get on a bus. That didn't always work. I'd have to walk, I sound like my father, but I had to walk 4 miles. It wasn't snowing and I did have shoes, but, it really puts a damper on the time that you have. And so I think we need to be willing to look at more creative ideas. And I think that's one of the great things about having new people on the council. I appreciate Diana Dickey so much. I think she's wonderful. She endorsed me, which is quite an honor. And I've got to talk to her quite a lot about it. And I do think that having some new faces and new ideas on the council is going to be really important because we need to be willing to think outside the box, because obviously what we're doing right now isn't working, so we have to look at it a different way.
Speaking of transportation, some people don't even take buses. They walk or bike, and we've had way too many deaths over the last year or so.
10 I think this year. And
between 2015 and 2016 already. And one of the things, and this is a big bugaboo for me, is that I don't feel comfortable walking across certain streets here in this town because the traffic is way too fast. People don't stop for you. And, so it's not just the deaths. It's people being afraid to cross the streets. And the alternative for them then is to drive somewhere, which creates even more traffic problems. So what do you see as a solution to fixing that, making it more pedestrian friendly or bike friendly here in the town?
I think definitely that needs to be one of our top priorities. We could have a lot of folks who would be willing to, walk to their jobs or walk to a friend's and carpool or that kind of thing if it was safer. Especially, this is for me in Ward 5, our sidewalk situation is terrible. I live on Front Street. We don't have sidewalks on either side of the street. We don't even have an area for bikes. I mean, there's nothing. It's just the street. So, and I see people walking there all the time. And it's very scary because you don't, you walk on the opposite side so you can see the cars coming at you, but there's not a lot of room. And so what we need to do is, first of all, we need to get sidewalks where there should be sidewalks. The biking is also, I mean, we need to have very clearly marked bike lanes. We need to have more of them. I was fortunate to be working at Travel Salem at the time when we first started doing the road share, with the lane and the arrows. And that actually, people were like, oh, that's never going to work or whatever. And it actually has worked quite well. So I think maybe expanding that would be great. And then I think also there's some areas I know where people, like on 17th Street, you're trying to cross the road. There's so much traffic. People aren't paying attention. So, we need like an actual crosswalk, and we need, I really like those signs that show the crossing that are solar. So they're not,
so the flashing lights.
Right, so the flashing light, so it's like someone is crossing. So it's not like the full kind of thing you would have where there's a traffic light.
Right.
But there would still be a safe place for people to cross. And it doesn't take a lot of money. That's actually one of the least expensive ways to go. And like I said, they're solar now, which is great. So I think we really need to increase those. And then also, I would really personally like to see us do some more advocacy for safe roads, maybe like an ad campaign or something like that, where we talk about, I think people have forgotten, and when there's a pedestrian on the corner of the road and they want to cross, they have the right of way. I think maybe some re-education would be, I know people hate to hear that, but it's true. And I don't know why that is that people have seemed to forget that, or they just don't care. But I think we definitely need to have
my
better
personal
education.
opinion on that is that people are overworked and they feel rushed all the
Real
time.
rushed,
And
yeah.
I understand that. Now that I'm retired, it's much more obvious to me that people are just stressing too much to get to where they're
Right.
going because they don't have that much time. They're
Right.
spending too much time at work and in traffic and like that. And it gets to you after a while.
Sure.
And I understand that. The other thing is, too, with those flashing lights, they won't put them on a street unless there's multiple lanes in one direction. So like 17th Street, which is with one lane each way and
the
sometimes with a
middle.
suicide lane, or
Right.
what we call a suicide lane.
Right.
And I feel like it sometimes, but they won't put them in there. And see, that's something that the city council, I could think, would direct Public Works to look into
Right.
at certain places that they need to do that. The other thing that is a concern is affordable housing. We're about 6,000 units short. And what do there's a task force for the homeless, but there seems to be very, very little action going on.
Right.
So what is your feeling on the task force that's been assigned the job of studying homelessness, and how do we get more affordable housing? Because there's so many vouchers turned in every month because people can't find a place.
Right. It's great questions. And also, again, two of the things that I really care about, and you'll notice on my campaign material I talk about it quite a bit, but and with regards to the task force, I appreciate that they're getting together, and I think it's really important. I think the fact that they're talking about it more is a good step. I think a lot of the folks that they have on the panel they mean well. There's good information there. And there is a point at the very beginning where you do have to first gather the information. To go in and just say, we're going to fix this, and do no research whatsoever, and then just come up with some ideas, chances are those ideas aren't going to last or work. So I appreciate that we have to do a little bit of research, we have to study, we have to look at what things we think will work, what things have worked elsewhere. But like you said, we have a homeless crisis now. So we need to do things now. And so what I would like to see us do is perhaps look into, there's some buildings that are vacant at the state hospital property. And I haven't gotten to do a lot of work on this, so I can't tell you for sure that that is something that would be achievable. But I would like to see us at least look at that as a possibility for like a temporary housing situation. One thing that the task force is doing that I really appreciate is they're looking at it as a housing first problem. Because the truth of the matter is, folks can't get stable and find jobs and move on unless they have a place to be. When you fill out an application for a job, you need a phone number, you need an address, you need to be able to go to the job having showered and looking presentable, and a place where they can contact you. So I think the housing first aspect is really important. I think we need to try to move a little faster on finding that housing. I think we need to look at multi-use facilities. I think sometimes we have houses that could be turned into apartments. I think there are a lot of options that we're not really looking at. Farther out, what I'd like to see us doing is working hand in hand with developers. Salem is growing, and that's a great thing. But I think what we need to do is, one of the things that maybe we didn't keep in mind when we were revitalizing downtown, is the folks that live in downtown, who work in downtown, then need a place to live, and they need for it to be affordable. And if we're not building that, then we're going to be short on people who can work there, but we're going to lose folks. And so I'd like to see us work with developers and say, look, if you're going to develop, if you want to come in and you want to build this housing and you want to build these nice apartments or whatever, then 25% of it needs to be affordable housing. And we do other kinds of subsidies. I think, we could work in trying to do some kind of a subsidy to help with that, and perhaps lower the fees and taxes on that portion of the building so that they don't have to pay the high fees and taxes, because the SDCs are kind of a problem, and doing affordable housing. But we need to make that a priority, and I think that's something the council could be very constructive in doing. And then because I'm not sure everyone realizes it, but when you have 5% or less of available housing, they consider that a housing crisis. And right now in Salem, we have 2.3% available in rental and 1.16% available to purchase, which means, we're basically out of housing, and that means the prices go up. And this is especially critical for first-time home buyers. They can't get into a home now. Renters, they're being asked to leave by their landlords, and then the rent is going up 2, sometimes 3 times for the next renter because they can. And to a point, you can't fault folks for that. That's their property. They're trying to make money. I understand that. But we need to come together and figure out how can we facilitate solutions so that we're not, in this crisis, because it's a problem. And I think that also goes to looking at homes that are vacant and finding ways to work with those. And again, maybe turning that home into apartments, that kind of a thing.
Well, Tiffany, we don't have any more time.
Oh, no.
So I didn't get a chance to ask you what other issues were important to you. But I want to really thank you for running for office and joining us here to talk a little bit about how you envision Salem.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
My pleasure.
And so this has been 2016 Elections. Thank you for watching, and come back next time.